Police Service Commission and constitutional lawyer Martin George joins me on the set, of course. Well, actually on the Zoom line. I'm hoping one day, Martin, we could, I know it's really early, and I know it's really tough sometimes, but I hope one day we could have you on the set. We'll work on it before the end of the year, man. Yes. But great to see you, Martin. Listen, I couldn't wait to really unpack this developing story with you, because we heard the developments over the weekend. So she got the clearance, and well, yesterday you can see a well-rested and quite relieved commissioner going back to the administration building. You saw the ease on her face. She feels, as she says, vindicated. Martin, your initial reaction to this latest development?
Well, the thing is, if you recall, Jason, I think we had started to unpack this issue since when, the events of 31st January, when she was initially suspended by the PSC, arose. And one of the things I then pointed out was that I was of the respectful view that the Police Service Commission had to act. They had a duty to act in the circumstances and take a decision. And essentially, the judge yesterday has basically confirmed that position. Justice Suchan in his ruling, has made it clear that he was of the view that the Police Service Commission's decision to act in the circumstances and to, enforce the suspension from duty was the right thing, for the proper administration of justice, and I guess for, the hierarchy of the police service to continue without there being too much, negative fallout as a result. And, one of the things we have to bear in mind, Jason, is that there is actually precedent to say that a police service commission must act in such circumstances. There's the Privy Council case, a 2019 Privy Council case, the one which was brought by the group Jamaicans for Justice, right? So arising out of a scenario in Jamaica where there were, a series of unlawful police killings. All right, this group called Jamaicans for Justice, they brought to the attention of the Jamaican Police Service Commission their version. Sorry, my sincere apologies. Their version of it. They brought to their attention the fact that, look, some of these things appeared to be unjustified, and some of these killings appeared to be linked directly to the then Deputy Commissioner of Police. And the Police Service Commission in Jamaica, they did a cursory, superficial investigation, and they said, well, there was nothing further they could do. And the group said, no, you have to do a full and thorough investigation. And they launched legal action against the Police Service Commission in Jamaica, and they took it all the way to the Privy Council, and the Privy Council held, hey, listen, you as a public body carrying out this constitutionally appointed function, you have a duty to investigate thoroughly any such allegations. So therefore, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Commission, I think once they heard of the allegations and the circumstances, particularly the circumstances surrounding the arrest, then they definitely had that duty to act and to do an investigation. Now, that's the part that we haven't heard anything from them on. Now, it would appear that their decision to reinstate has dovetailed quite nicely with the DPP's decision that no charges can be laid. Now, this does not relieve the Police Service Commission from having conducted their own investigation, if you understand me, because they do have a duty. Of course, yes, the DPP in terms of the criminal realm, but remember the Police Service Commission exercises disciplinary and supervisory authority and management control over the police commissioner and the deputy police commissioners. Okay. So therefore, they had a duty to also conduct their own investigation.
Well, let me ask, with her birthday being Thursday, her 62nd birthday, and with that, the contract coming to an end, it seems from her utterances yesterday, again, it just looks like, from my standpoint, there is a desire to continue. If you If you had an heir or was able to give a legal advice or just any advice at all, would you think it's fitting for her to continue, or just to rally this one out and continue what seems to be legal action? There seems to be some kind of litigation coming forward. She's not ruling that out, but the extension of the contract, it makes sense at this point with all that took place?
Well, the thing is, you see, I mean, that type of decision would really be something that both the Police Service Commission and the government, they would be the ones who would have to decide upon that issue. And you would have to look at, okay, who do you have in terms of your succession planning? Right? Is it that you have someone whom you are grooming, who is really, suitable to step into the shoes, who you can make an appointment in terms of a permanent commissioner, as opposed to, just a stopgap measure where you let this contract run out and you say, well, okay, we're appointing somebody to act in the position while we conduct the search for a permanent commissioner. Now, the reality is, Jason, as I've said before, our process for the appointment of a permanent commissioner is way too cumbersome, convoluted, and overburdened. All right, it is actually easier in Trinidad and Tobago to appoint a chief justice, to appoint a prime minister, to appoint an opposition leader, than it is to appoint a police commissioner. And we need to fix this. And the only way it can be done is by a process of constitutional reform. Because remember, the Police Service Commission is one of your constitutionally enshrined institutions. So therefore, you would need to have the support of both sides of Parliament to ensure that there's some meaningful reform done there. Now, while we were at the Police Service Commission, I remember one of the things we undertook was a self-analysis, and we did a comprehensive study, and we submitted a detailed report on ways that the Police Service Commission can be reformed, because we felt for ourselves that, look, this is not serving the best interests of the public of Trinidad and Tobago, the way we are structured and the way we are functioning. And I mean, that report was submitted, no action was taken on it, but I mean, it is still there as a template and a guide as to ways you can reform this body called the PSC. One of the things we called for was for there to be permanent full-time commissioners. In other words, we were saying that, look, commissioners should serve a 5-year term minimum, and they should be full-time commissioners in that regard. So that way you have more continuity and you have more ability to carry out the functions, because it's quite a lot that you have to monitor, manage, measure. You have to conduct studies, you have to conduct investigation, you have to go into police stations all across the nation, understand what is happening, where the shortages, where the manpower, deficits, what is needed in terms of, the management oversight, so it's quite a lot that is needed to be done. And I think we really need to, make that first step towards the constitutional reform and see if we can start to fix this, because this is like a broken record, Jason.
Yeah,
we all hear the complaints in terms of how difficult it is to have this appointment, and we keep going in circles. And really
that's something you would have been consistent with. You've always said that from day one, Martin.
Am I? Hello?
Yes, I'm seeing you. Just had a little break.
Jason,
there.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Martin? Yes.
Hi.
Yes, so Martin, it's something you would have mentioned.
I think I got frozen for a bit.
You got frozen for a bit. If there's one thing I must say, you've been consistent with that. You've said that from day one, and we've been having conversations for years now. Martin, I want to ask you, one of your colleagues who would have sat in the same seat in terms of being a former Police Service Commission member, this is Professor Ramesh Dewsaran. He says, DCP Martin has questions to answer. Do you share that sentiment?
Well, the thing is, when one looks at the entire scenario as to how this unfolded, there will be questions in terms of, was there sufficient justification, not just for the arrest of the commissioner, but the manner in which it was carried out? Because when you have something like this playing out in the public space, and you think of the humiliation, the embarrassment, it's listen, it's something that the commissioner could never recover from, regardless. So even if she takes a legal action and she's awarded a certain sum of money, that still cannot erase it. Because you know what, Jason? 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, all that people will remember. Oh yes, wasn't she the one who got arrested and the allegations were made? And the danger and damage in such scenarios, Jason, is in the allegation and, well, in her case more so, the manner of the public arrest which occurred. Now, one has to pay attention to what the DPP said, where he said he was of the view that there may have been sufficient evidence for the arrest. Now, of course, that still doesn't mean that the manner in which it was done, was the most judicious and circumspect way of treating with it. Because at the end of the day, one has to give respect to people's offices. That's something I've always been very firm on, Jason, regardless of what. So regardless of what personalities or personages may occupy the offices in Trinidad and Tobago, we still have to maintain that respect for the offices and institutions.
And in that regard, Martin, my last question to you is twofold. What does this do to the internal morale and the external public image of the TTPS?
Well, of course, again, the external public image has taken a beating, because the thing is, it's the butt of jokes, all around, and even the fact that, the commissioner is now back for what may essentially be the last 3 days of her contract. It's what we in Trinidad and Tobago refer to as a Kobo sweat. A Kobo
sweat. Yes, a Kobo sweat. Yes.
Is about to finish,
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
The 90 minutes almost up, and in the 89th minute,
you're warming up.
The coach brings you on,
You touch the ball once and that's it, the game blow off. Yeah,
that's right, So, it really does not bode well for the image and public confidence in terms of the TTPS as an institution. And, it also appears that internally, there may be some internecine wranglings and, unresolved issues among the top brass of the police service. So, it's really, really a precarious scenario for anyone to manage, more so someone who has been, the recipient of, this public, dressing down and public shaming, so to speak. There's no other way to describe it. It's been a public humiliation and embarrassment for the commissioner. So, how she navigates this over the next 3 days, or if it is that she's up for an extension, we haven't heard anything yet from the government in that regard, or even from the Police Service Commission. But, it's really going to be interesting to see how this is managed by our Police Service Commission. And of course, we have our new Minister of Homeland Security in the form of Mr. Roger Alexander. So, it would be interesting to see how they treat with it.
Should any heads roll? Should there be any kind of suspension for those if they're able to pull back the layers and recognize there was mischief, there was some kind of internal grievance put in place, as it were, to put the commissioner up and to arrest her and to take her through that kind of public embarrassment?
Well, if it is that an investigation does reveal that there was some, Machiavellian plot, lurking in the shadows, which basically resulted in the machinations behind the scenes to cause this to be played out in the public space, resulting in the humiliation of the police commissioner. And there was nothing except, as the play Macbeth said, vaulting ambition, which o'erleaps itself and falls on the other. When Shakespeare described the ambitions of Macbeth's wife. So if it's that kind of scenario that motivated and, activated these actions, then I would think, of course, once investigations reveal that, then of course there ought to be consequences. And one has to remember, it's not just a question of trying to say, well, okay, can criminal charges be brought against persons for those actions? Because of course there's a question of misbehavior in public office, but more importantly, as I say, the Police Service Commission has a duty to investigate these issues, and I remind and I commend them all, the present Police Service Commission, have a look at this 2019 Privy Council decision, Jamaicans for Justice. It is a very, very instructive judgment. Because, Jason, in this program, when you and I chat, we speak about the scenarios and we speak about the history, but I always like to bring in the legal aspect so that you have something as a precedent or a guide that can, shape and fashion our way forward.
Martin, as always, sincere thanks, and hopefully we could get you on the set one of these days, but it's always a pleasure, whether it's Zoom or here live. We thank you for the perspective. All the best, Martin.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Martin George with us, constitutional lawyer.